Good morning. Our usual practice during Holy Week is to meet daily for a time of service and worship as well as a time of fellowship. That's not possible this week, so I offer this to you instead. I would like for us to take this journey with Jesus throughout this week and share daily in a meditation. I believe if we take this journey, Easter will be all the sweeter, even though we won't be able to be meeting together. We began yesterday with Palm Sunday, but Monday always follows close behind. What a difference a day makes. Yesterday's crowds, yesterday's hosannas, yesterday's palms are all by the wayside now. The joy of Sunday fades quickly come Monday morning. The city is still bustling. It always does this time of year. The merchants have stocked extra in anticipation of Passover crowds, but things are uneasy. Pilate worries about all these pilgrims, and Annas and Caiaphas are concerned about this upstart rabbi who has a growing popularity. Judas is wondering if Jesus will ever make a move. Jesus is on the road to Calvary. It's Monday morning. Let us read together from Mark chapter 11, beginning with verse 12. The next morning, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus felt hungry. He noticed a fig tree a little way off that was in full leaf. So he went over to see if he could find any figs on it. But there were only leaves because it was too early in the season for fruit. Then Jesus said to the tree, "May no one ever eat your fruit again." And the disciples heard him say it. When they arrived back in Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple and began to drive out the merchants and their customers. He knocked over the tables of the money changers and the stalls of those selling doves, and he stopped everyone from bringing in merchandise. He taught them, "The scriptures declare, my temple will be called a place of prayer for all nations, but you have turned it into a den of thieves." When the leading priests and teachers of religious law heard what Jesus had done, they began planning how to kill him. But they were afraid of him because the people were so enthusiastic about Jesus' teaching. That evening, Jesus and his disciples left the city. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. As Jesus approaches the temple on Monday, he notices this beautiful, green, well-shaped fig tree. From a distance, the tree looks good. It seems to be a healthy, productive tree, but it's not. Mark tells us that it's not fig season. That's still about 5 weeks away. But this tree is deceptive. This tree is already covered with leaves. That's what catches Jesus' eye. Since it's in full leaf, he expects to find figs on it. Figs begin to appear before the leaves. That's why this fig tree holds so much promise of having figs. But Jesus looks and finds nothing, no figs at all, nothing but leaves, fruitless. It looks good. It holds a promise for figs, but the promise is unfulfilled. The task of a fig tree is to produce figs, not leaves. This tree is fruitless and phony. It appears to be something it isn't. That's the problem, hypocrisy. Failing to produce what's promised. Style over substance. Looking good, but barren. You know, it's good to look good. That is, unless looking good is all we have. God isn't impressed when we just look like we're fruitful. He isn't impressed with a bunch of shiny green leaves. He's looking for actual fruit. Is there evidence of God's fruit in our lives? When Jesus finds none on this tree, he curses it. He offers no explanation. perhaps our best clue is where he heads next. You know, it's hard to underestimate the importance of the temple for the Jewish people. It's where heaven and earth intersect. It's where God's presence indwells in a specific and unique way. It's where sins are forgiven as sacrifices are offered. It's estimated that well over 200,000 lambs will be sacrificed on its altar during Passover. Listen, Passover is a travel agent's dream, but a public official's nightmare. Advanced preparations for the influx of the millions of pilgrims began months ago. People come from all over to be part of the celebration. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, they're expected to meet two requirements. First, offer an animal for sacrifice. Travel conditions make it so that bringing one on your own is almost impossible. But even if you're able, outside animals just aren't accepted. In theory, any animal without spot or blemish should be approved. In practice, only the ones sold in the temple are. The sale of sacrificial animals is a lucrative business. The thirst of greed inflates the price. The second thing each pilgrim must do is to pay a temple tax. So in addition to purchasing animals at an inflated rate, you're at the mercy of the currency exchangers. You come in with the currency of your home. You're required to make your payment in temple coin. The exchange rate guarantees a substantial promise. So when Jesus walks into the temple on Monday morning, what's he expecting? What greets him is really no surprise. Instead of the Gentile courtyard being filled with worshipers, it's filled with money changers and animal merchants. It's a convenient shortcut through to the Mount of Olives. So what's the big problem? All are allowed in the court of Gentiles, so long as the inner court remains untouched by all this activity. Surely no real harm is done. But Jesus doesn't see that. This too is supposed to be a place of prayer and preparation. And now it's anything but. Just imagine. You come to worship only to be greeted by the smells and sounds of pinned animals, verbally assaulted by merchants, pushed out of the way by those intent on cutting through. Though it's not the Holy of Holies, it's still supposed to be a sacred place. The animal sounds and smells, the haggling of vendors in the temple is more than what Jesus can stomach. It's not difficult to see what angers Jesus. It is those who are making a franchise out of others' faith. Pilgrims journey for a long distance, and they are being treated as if their worship doesn't matter. Listen, I've had enough is written all over the Messiah's face. Like the fig tree, the promise and the delivery just don't match up. So Jesus cleans house, turning over tables, driving out merchants and money changers. This is no temper tantrum. It's a deliberate act with an intentional message. Jesus is passionately disgusted with wickedness that claims to be righteous. You know, it's springtime in South Georgia. Temperatures are rising and yellow pollen is everywhere. This time of sheltering at home has gotten me taking walks and messing around in the yard and in the garden. And yes, I've even done a little bit of spring cleaning. But I'm sure my idea of cleaning is quite different from some of you. I practice the hit and miss method of cleaning. So it may look good on the surface, but I'm afraid things aren't as clean as they probably should be, especially during this season. That's what Jesus finds on this spring day in Jerusalem. A fig tree that looks good on the outside but doesn't have any fruit. A temple that looks so impressive as a holy place of worship. But instead, Jesus calls it a den of thieves. Religious leaders whose lives looked so alive, so green, so well-shaped, but upon closer inspection, no fruit. Lots of activity. Everything looks good, but no changed lives. So Jesus cleans house. The dirt, the unfruitfulness must be dealt with. It's been tolerated far too long. This isn't a smiling Jesus with children on his hip. This is Jesus fastening a whip to drive out those desecrating his temple. The reality is, those of us who are so close to it are often the furthest away. It's about so much more than business as usual. This crisis certainly points it out to us. So where are we putting our efforts? What is our burden? What do we need to have cleansed from our lives? What ideas and practices, just need to go? If we are to truly meet God in these temples of our bodies, what needs to change? Yeah, the signs of spring are everywhere. Maybe it is time to do some cleaning. God be with you till we meet again.